Hello, everyone, and very good morning to all. Today, we welcome you to My Mission Admission. My name is Alnoor, and today I'm bringing you yet another webinar on English as a global language and what great prospects to students who want to pursue a course in or a career in English teaching can have for themselves. English today is becoming a very global language. In almost all business scenarios, English is a mode of communication, be it written communication, verbal, or any other. It's the language which is being followed mostly in most of the countries, and thus, in order to travel to any part of the world, in order to work in any part of the world, it is very important to have a good understanding about English language. And this is also increasing a lot of prospects for English trainers. There are a lot of certification courses in English training from institutions like Oxford and all. And so these trainers also having very good prospects for themselves. So, in order to discuss about this in detail, today we're having with us yet another highly qualified English trainer, Miss Alida Ghulam Hussain. Hello, Alida.
Hi,
How are
morning.
you doing?
I'm wonderful today. Thank you, Elnur. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much. Before we just start discussing about this subject, I'll just give you a few things about Alida. She has been a part of the banking background, and she's been handling retail banking, working on projects, complaints department, and back office processing. And then after 13 years, she retrained as an English language professor, and now she is a CELTA certified trainer, and she's taking online classes, online lessons for teaching business professionals English language. Alida, you've done so much in English in banking background, and then you decided to move to English training. How? What made you make this transition?
Elnur, I worked for a very big banking organization, and it was HSBC that I used to work for. And HSBC and a lot of companies in the West have started to migrate a lot of work out to places like India and China and Eastern Europe as well. And the banking industry was fabulous, and I joined at the peak where all the work was being migrated over, and I began to realize that actually English wasn't just a language for the UK, the US, and America as well. And I started becoming a lot more interested. And I worked on a lot of projects, and I interacted with a lot of people from India initially, actually, because a lot of the work was migrated out there. So after 13 years, fantastic career in banking, I decided I wanted to do something different. And to be honest, the one thing that was driving me was doing something for others. And English as my first language, it connected with me. I loved India. And the opportunity as an English speaker was massive in a country like India, because so much work is moving over um, from like I said, from Europe, America. There's so much work that's being moved over, so it was a massive opportunity. So I left the UK and I thought, I want to teach English. How do I go about doing it? So I did my research as to what do I need to do in order to become an English language trainer. What are the career prospects? I know there are so many different companies here. So there is a lot of corporate companies
So,
who would like English speakers and proficient English speakers to teach their staff, their employees in companies, but also online teaching is something that is very up and coming, very big at the moment. And I thought, how can I do it? As a native, I obviously know English, but teaching is very different to just speaking the language. So after doing some research, I decided that the CELTA was the qualification that I wanted to do. It wasn't so much about the language, but the teaching methodology.
all
So
right.
how do you teach English as a second language to others?
Okay.
So I actually completed my CELTA here in India with the British Council in New Delhi. And it's an amazing course. It's 4 weeks intensive English language teaching. Day 2 is when you go out into the classroom and you teach.
Okay.
So it's, but you have assignments to do, you are teaching, so you're planning your lessons on day one for day two teaching. You're then giving your feedback and doing all your preparation for the next day. And teaching is English language teaching is not just about, like I said, knowing that language. It's making your learners love the language and be able to retain that information as well. How do you teach in a way that makes it memorable for the students?
Right. So, Alida, we've been discussing about a lot on how English language training, what you need to do for that. But before we discuss further into this, there's a very important thing that we must discuss, and that is what is the scope of English language? I mean, we all know, we all understand that English is becoming a global language, and it's being used everywhere. You've seen it in your experiences as well in your banking sector. So,
Mm.
what is the scope of English language, and how do you see it rising or decreasing, or what's your vision to it?
So English, personally, I think is the fastest growing language in the world. It's definitely the language of business. And I
Okay.
think I read somewhere that China has more English language speaking students than in the West, than in native English countries. So the scope in places like India and China, certainly the developing countries, is massive. And more organizations are migrating work from the Western countries into the developing countries as well. So there is more of a need, more of a requirement for English language institutes or one-to-one training. I know from my experience of teaching online, I interact with a lot of business people, and they want to learn English so they can interact better with their colleagues in other countries. So I teach French people online, but they have interaction with people from India, Eastern Europe, America, the UK, and all over the world. So it's not just India and China, but they are two massive countries that are very up and coming in terms of scope. But everybody wants to do it. So I think the requirement, even in a native speaking country, because of the migrants that are coming in also, there are still opportunities there. So as the world becomes not smaller, but there are less barriers for movement of work
Right.
and people, the opportunities is just going to increase more and more and more. Definitely on the
Okay.
increase.
Perfect. As you just mentioned, that a lot of businesses flowing to these Eastern countries. Yes, India and China are becoming the biggest hubs of outsourcing. There's
Mm.
a lot of software processing, back office processing, which happens in these countries, and it is very important for these people to communicate in the same language as the native English speakers. So yes, in that sense, there is a lot of scope. But how do you think has this English become a global language? Is it because of the dominance of the British rule across the world? Do you think that's where the roots come from, or is it some other factor?
I think that has definitely been an influence, because there are many countries that were colonized by the British, so that has an influence, certainly. However, it's a common language. There's if it's one of the languages that a lot of people speak in these colonized, or the ones that used to be
Right.
colonized by the British. However, it's still becoming more and more popular as a global language for business. If you're in the UK, if you're in France and you're in China, where is the common language? You either speak French or you speak Chinese, and that's not the way. So if you're from Germany, France, and China, and you're all doing business together, the one
Right.
common language, certainly in business, is English.
Right.
Definitely, wherever you are. And it used to be French, but like I said, with the colonization, it's just English is the one common language. Whether you go to travel, whether you're doing business, whatever it is that you're doing, that's a one common thing. Do you speak English? Everywhere that I've been in different countries, do you speak English? Either I'm being asked or they're asking, or I'm asking them as well. So it's the first thing that comes to people's mind is, do you speak English? And it's just something that I don't see falling down at all. I just see it being on the increase, being on the rise more and more and more.
Wonderful. So, Alida, my next question to you is, you just mentioned that, English training is not just about knowing the language, but also knowing how to teach the language. That's where all these certification courses come from.
Yeah.
Have you, in your career, faced any barriers? So you've been teaching a lot of French people, French professionals as well. And
Yeah.
what other professionals have you been teaching?
I have also been doing some voluntary work with some Afghan students that I have also. So at the moment, predominantly, my job is with French people, but I have been doing lessons with other people also, and some Indian people as well. So, sorry?
So, fine. That's where my question comes to. That, dealing with people of so many different languages, how difficult it becomes sometimes to make them understand what you're trying to teach them, and because they might be having their own language, and giving them a very different language which they might be knowing certain basics about but not so much in depth. So how difficult it becomes to teach, and if you are into this, so what kind of skill sets are required in order to convince them, in order to communicate to them? What kind of skill sets are actually required for this?
Yeah, it's not easy. I'll tell you that now. It's really it's very challenging sometimes. Even just with my French learners, I have learners that don't know that know the very basics, and I have some very high level learners as well. So just in that example there, what I would say is that you need imagination, you need to have the passion, and you need to have the will to be able to communicate to them. So imagination, for example, I had to teach somebody, or I had to teach somebody what the word bucket was, because he didn't know. So by using examples of other words that he did know to try and come to this, what was a bucket? For me, it's very simple. A bucket is a bucket. But I try to explain that to someone that doesn't know what that word is. I had to use my imagination to talk about, how do you wash your car? What do you put the water in to wash your car with? To explain, I could have gone straight to Google Translate and said, this is a French word for bucket. Easy.
Right.
However, I don't think that people would remember. So that, certainly with the teaching, you do have to be proficient in the English language to teach, but it's your imagination, and it's how do you make the lesson come alive? How do you you can't always fall back on the language. I don't speak French, so my learners can't speak French with me. I know very few words, 2 or 3 words. So you have to make them come alive by using even like pictures to show things, or use pictures to then describe flowers or trees or fish or whatever it is. So knowing that it's not just about talking and the verbal communication, there are so many different methods that you can use to teach. So, visual, looking at pictures, describing other things, talking about, or giving a story with different words in there as well. So it's not easy at all. It's a very challenging career. Certainly for me, it was completely different to banking. So being creative and using your imagination is definitely a plus point. But I'll go back to, and I think I've said it before, you need to have that passion that you want to teach something, and it's going to help somebody in the long run, in business, in your personal life, wherever it's going to be. Be passionate, be creative, think outside the box.
That's really wonderful. But what so, in order to be disqualified, you've done a CELTA certification, and I'm sure there are a lot of other certifications also available in the industry. Could you please tell us something about what the CELTA certification is about, and if there are other certifications in the industry, then how do they go about it, and how much time is required for this? What are the things that you should know about these certifications? What are the courses that you need to do before?
Okay, so when I first decided I was going to be an English language teacher, is how do I get qualified? I don't just want to do it without having a qualification. So
Right.
when I did my research, is do I do it online or do I do it face to face? That was my first choice. The person that I am, I like interaction with people. So face to face wasn't, online wasn't something that I wanted to do, but the option was there. So then I thought, okay, face to face, where do I want to do it? Do I want to do it in the UK? That was an option. Do I want to do it in India? That was another option. And in terms of the types of qualification, I'd already decided then face to face in India. That was my decision. So
Okay.
there was CELTA, and there's also other organisations that do something called a TEFL, the Teaching English as a Foreign Language certification, and there's a TESOL as well, which is Teaching English as a second language. So there's a
Okay.
TEFL, TESOL, and the CELTA. For me, being British, I wanted to do it at the British Council. So I researched how long would it take, how much would the cost be. Online courses are cheaper than doing face-to-face courses because it's different
Right.
teaching methodology. So again, that was a factor, is how much will it cost me as well, and how much time will it take. So these are the three main ones, that TEFL, TESOL, and the CELTA. The CELTA is very well recognized across the world. The
Okay.
the TEFL is also, but the CELTA would, because it's affiliated with Cambridge, it's probably slightly more recognized than the other qualifications, but the other qualifications also. So it's a very tough decision. Online, face to face. Which country do I want to do it? Because you can again go abroad and go to different countries for a month and do this certification just for a month also. So I decided face to face, I wanted to go to India to do it. Well, how long does it take? 4 weeks intensive. So at that time, there wasn't anything else that I was involved with, because it was usually 8 o'clock in the morning till maybe 8 o'clock at night. So the lessons were early on. The teaching was early on until 5 o'clock, but lesson planning followed by preparation of the lessons. Also, what am I going to do tomorrow? Making sure you've done all your research in terms of the listening exercises, the grammar exercises. So it's very intense. Plus, you have assignments to do. So over 4 weeks for CELTA, you have one assignment a week. So on top of your teaching from day 2, right, for the 4 weeks, you then have assignments to do, plus your preparation and planning and everything for the lessons as well. So dedication is definitely something that is required for a full month with the CELTA, certainly. With the online courses, you can take longer to do them, so there's less pressure or compressed pressure, because the time that you have to do them is longer. I guess it depends on how quickly you want to do it. What other pressures do you have outside of the course? Because I didn't have a job. I left the UK and HSBC, and then that's all I wanted to concentrate on. So that's what I did. So 3 levels: TEFL, TESOL, CELTA, intensive face-to-face, a little less intensive online, but you still have to go and do some teaching experience. So some courses offer the course without any face-to-face experience. Personally, I wouldn't recommend having no face-to-face teaching practice whilst doing the course. I think that's very beneficial, especially if you're not used to being in front of students, because it's very different to stand in front of a class and to teach if it's something that you've never done before.
Right. Also, you're taking online classes, and with this technology, and so we're also using technology to have this discussion, which is being telecast live amongst so many students. So yeah, that's how you also use some technology to take your online classes. But how different are those from offline classes which are conducted? And what's having more scope, online or offline? Because online, obviously, you're reaching out to audiences on a global scale. Offline, you're restricted. So, what options are good for the students who want to aspire to become English trainers?
So again, it's on personal preference. For me, like you said, the scope is wider. So I could be teaching somebody in Brazil, for example, and in India also. So I could even online, I could be local or I could be international. So the scope is
Right.
much wider to do that. But face-to-face has a different relationship with your students as well. I meet my students for 30 minutes, that's it, done, and I meet them tomorrow or I meet them next week for 30 minutes. I think it's personal preference. I don't mind either. I like face-to-face because with my Afghan students, they're all face-to-face and I love that interaction. And with my job is it's not face-to-face, it's obviously online.
Okay.
It's down to personal preference, to be honest. The scope is wider online, but it's I like both. I love both.
Right, right, great. Alida, we're having some questions from the audience also, which I would want to put in front of you.
Yeah, fine.
One question is there's a lot of BPO outsourcing happening in India.
Mhm.
BPO business process, so a lot of call centers are present in India. So,
Mhm.
what scope does English language bear over there? I think the answer is pretty obvious for this.
Yeah, if you are proficient in that language, there's a huge amount of scope, to do it. Like the person who's asked the question, there's a lot of BPOs. Working for HSBC, we had hundreds and thousands of jobs that moved. And when I actually worked in the call center for HSBC also in Hyderabad a few years ago, and I was one of the English language trainers because of my proficiency in English. So it's very important that everybody has a certain level if you're interacting again with people outside or native speakers. So yeah, massive scope. There's still been more and more work that is being brought into India and a lot of companies that are doing it. So if you are proficient in the language, and I think pronunciation and accent is very important to make sure that you yourself as an English language teacher practice also. So if you have your accent and you have your pronunciation down, there's massive opportunities.
So, Alida, this leads me to two of my own questions. One is, are there any English trainings happening in the BPOs as well? So, for the, I mean, employee training or something like that. Are there any English trainings happening over there? Is there a scope in that division as well? And the second question is, are there any, so, accent and pronunciation are also very important, as you just said. So, are there any classes for accent and pronunciation trainings also? I mean, do you, as a trainer, also take these kind of classes?
Okay, so first question, in these BPOs, yes, there is scope for maybe not 100% English language training, but soft skills training. So
Right.
how to talk to customers. So obviously, if you're speaking in English to your customers, you have to know how to speak to them. So there's more soft skill side training that you can. There is opportunity. When I was working in the call center in Hyderabad, I was working on linguistic sign-offs. So actually, is this person speaking in a neutral accent, and is the pronunciation good, and is the vocabulary good also? So that's the kind of scope that I had when I was working as a team leader out in the call center here. So, and I had friends in the training department that were training on cultural aspects, so the British culture or the American culture and things like that. So, but again, everything was in English. Second question, accent and pronunciation. I think it's important to have a good accent. You don't have to have a British accent. You don't have to have an American accent. But it has to be something that is neutral, and pronunciation is very important in the English language. The reason is if you mispronounce a word, the meaning can completely change for the
Right.
sentence or the context that you're talking in. And in my classes, I do focus on pronunciation. We have lessons where we read, or my learner will read to me, so they can practice their pronunciation, and will correct any mispronunciation in there. In terms of scope for jobs, a lot of BPOs want voice and accent trainers, and I hear that they are looking for more maybe American or British accents. So that is definitely a plus point. If you can do those accents, then it's a plus point. But again, that's dependent on you. But there are voice and accent trainer jobs very readily available in the BPOs here.
Wonderful. There's another question from the audience. There's a student who wants to pursue a course in English honors, and now she's asking that how will it be helpful in doing this English training courses? This I
I
think is a question from an Indian audience, because English Indians don't have English as a native language, so
mm.
maybe that's the reason why she wants to do a course in English honors.
I know a lot of my CELTA colleagues who have got maybe a BEd or an English undergrad degree as well. And personally, if I were to live my life again, I would probably pursue, even as a native, an undergrad in English or English languages, even an undergrad in English language in the English language, rather than just doing the CELTA. But where I was in my career, that was just happened to be the choice. I already had the accent. I already had the exposure to the language. That's why I went
Right.
for CELTA. But I think it's good if you do the English undergrad or a BEd or something like that. I know a lot of my teaching colleagues do have that qualification. Certainly, the Indian ones that I know have that background, and I don't think it's a detriment. I think it's a good thing.
Wonderful, wonderful. Alida, that brings us to the end of our discussion. I would really like to thank you for giving time for educating these students.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate your efforts, and I'm sure the students also enjoyed this discussion, and they get to learn a lot about this, and we see some more budding English trainers in the industry today. And
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Alida, for being a part of this.
Thank you for inviting me, Elnur.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Take care.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, all the students, for watching this webinar. And there's a lot more webinars to come on various career opportunities. So stay tuned on My Mission Admission. Keep following our blog posts, and cheers to then. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.